a little bit of a changeover in terms of our Facebook stream, just because there were some back-end issues with Facebook. So we're just going to go ahead and kick things back off here and see how things go, and hopefully show you guys some pretty cool builds. So let me go ahead and just double check, make sure that everything is looking good in terms of the stream, and we'll jump into it from there, guys. So give me 1 second and we'll kick things off here. Hopefully everybody is having a positive and productive Friday. For those of you that are checking us out first time in terms of excuse me, first time here on YouTube, thank you guys. And so if you're not familiar with the PCDIY live stream, essentially this is a weekly live stream where we cover lots of different hardware, we cover feature announcements, we do feature demonstrations, we go over products, and a whole lot more. But one of the really cool parts is at the end, we actually do our PCDIY Builder Spotlight. And with the Builder Spotlight, we like to actually jump in and focus in on your guys' PC builds. And so if you guys actually want to check out about all the cool products that we talked about, including the ASUS Gundam series announcement, our brand new H1 gaming projector and home theater projector, some of our new mini PCs with the Vivo Mini VC66, as well as the PN62S, also the ROG Strixco BT headset. We've actually covered all those items, and you can find out more information by checking out those streams on our Facebook page. You can check out ASUS Facebook North America or ASUS ROG North America's page. So on this side, let's go ahead and jump into actually our first PCDIY Builder Spotlight. And this is going to be from IE Barber. And IE Barber actually has a pretty sweet ROG-centered build right here that we're going to be showing off. And so one of the really cool things that I like doing in terms of the kind of the PCDIY Builder Spotlight is, taking a look at the actual forms that you guys fill out, and allows me to kind of get a little bit of kind of insight in terms of kind of some of what are some of the cool things that you guys kind of are keeping in mind when you go about the actual build experience. And we can actually see it right here. So here, this is, of course, a little bit of a kind of focused in view, and we've got a pretty sweet system. You can already tell this is going to be a Strix LC cooler, and then we, of course, have an ROG series board, and we got a Strix series card, but no RGB on. So now let's see what happens here when we go ahead and now take a closer look at the actual setup. So looking pretty clean. Very nice. He, of course, has the ROG Helios chassis, so that's a great chassis, being able to fit a lot of hardware in there, whether you're going to go with the traditional kind of air-cooled setup or you're going to go with a water-cooled base setup. And you can see he's got the classic ROG red right there. He's also got some cool little LED strips there on the side profile, and, of course, red pretty much for all the lighting throughout the chassis, keyboard, mouse, and, of course, the RGB memory, the Strix card, and the Strix LC series cooler. Overall, pretty slick, pretty clean, and pretty well done. You can see, of course, he's managing all his cables and everything underneath the actual desk as well. It's got a little, of course, side mount option right there for a drink and, of course, for his headphones. We take a little bit of a closer look. Let's see what the inside is looking like here. Overall clean, well done. So you can see that he's got the Strix LC 360 AIO. So that's actually kind of the bigger version of this one right here that I have, which is the Strix LC2, which is a 280 millimeter. So we make it in a 240, a 280, and a 360. And I also like here to actually give a little bit of breathing room that when he was running the tubing, that he allows the actual ROG emblem to be actually entirely visible, so it's not actually covered. So overall, pretty clean. Now, the interesting thing here is going to be that, of course, really clean job here on the actual cables that are running to the actual RG Strix series card. We moved over there from kind of a brighter kind of daytime shot to, of course, here in the nighttime. And the only thing that I might consider is whether or not you might run the actual PCI power cables over the backside of the card and through the chassis. And that would allow you to have that full RGB light bar entirely visible. Overall, this looks really good. It's really clean and really well done. I'm just kind of torn as whether or not it would be worth kind of bringing it over the backside of the card as opposed to going to the front. Now, the one thing you would want to keep in mind is that Helios actually has a direct cutout right there that allows the cabling to go straight from the power supply up there. So it makes sense to use that as a routing point. So I'm not going to say that it's a question that's a bad routing point, because it makes sense. Overall, really clean and well done and well executed, and definitely gets a thumbs up from me in terms of the overall look and feel that he's got here with that classic kind of ROG red and black vibes. And here we can see just a nice little angled shot, and the cool thing right there is you can also see the ROG Thor series power supply right there that he's also got running an ASUS Aura Sync. So entire sync system and setup looks really clean, really well executed, and a great overall showcase of, you know, everything from ROG cooler to, of course, ROG board, ROG Strix Series graphics card, the Helios, and of course even the Thor. So kudos, man, to AE Barber. Really nice build overall. I think a really solid submission in terms of what you got for your actual builder spotlight. So definitely kudos to you on that side, man. Let me go ahead and see if I can get in here on the form side and show you what I got going on here. So 1 second. All right. And I just want to bring up our pages here for our different builders that we have. Okay, so I've got one more. There we go. Okay, great. So now let's go ahead and take a look at our next build. And also go ahead and check and see if anybody's got any questions, feel free. Our next build is going to be from Brett. Brett's got a really cool, nice and clean build. A little bit of a different vibe when you talk about kind of the overall, I'd say, non-RGB focus. So here we definitely went from a really kind of heavy RGB based system to, I think, definitely the opposite end of the spectrum, where we're going to go with a kind of real clean and not heavy RGB lighting theme based system. All right, so here we go. This is Brett's submission here for the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. And so clean kind of corner office type setup, looks really good, really clean, well done. I got nothing to complain about here, I mean, because it's a great looking setup, but of course, this is definitely not with the system actively up and running, right? So let's go ahead and kick this off and let's see what it looks like. So here we can now see everything actually turned on. Looks really clean, really well done. And overall, you can see with the system, very, very subtle. We've got a little bit of that lighting happening there on the graphics card, and then a little bit of a display there from the AIO cooler that he has in the system as well. But you can see overall very minimal in terms of the overall lighting. Hey, Kevin. Just started actually the stream a little bit ago, so we had to relaunch it. There were some back-end Facebook issues in terms of just getting the actual live studio working, so I had to go in and manually cut everything out and relaunch it. But if you've joined back up to be able to check out the PCDIY Builder Spotlight, man, thank you so much. I appreciate you waiting through that and letting us to get back up and running, man. So here you can actually take a look at his chassis and his setup. Really clean, really nice in terms, of course, of the tempered side glass and, of course, the front intake mesh. And here we can see a nice just shot of it with the RGB lighting off. Let me go ahead and hide that for us. Really clean, well executed in terms of the overall cable routing and the positioning for everything. So here you can see actually this is a good example of compared to the previous Builder Spotlight submission where we actually had the cables running in front of the card. Here he's gone ahead and run the cables over the backside of the card, allowing us to have full visibility to the RGB light bar that's actually present there, right? And also a clean job here where they mounted the AI cooler. This is an NZXT Kraken cooler. You can see that they ran the cabling underneath that as well, and it's also underneath the DIMMs, and it's not essentially obstructing that left side portion of the board where you have the IO shroud, so that if you did want to have a little bit of kind of more flare, a little bit more of kind of visibility in that space, you're not taking that up. But overall, very clean in terms of the cable routing and the overall execution. And here we can see actually lit up. I love that kind of just nice, clean, white LED light bar right there from the Strix card. And then, of course, it looks like he's using some general kind of hardware monitoring there on the Kraken side. So that looks good. You know, overall, no complaints. I think Brett, very, very clean, well executed. And we can definitely see right here as well that from the cable management standpoint, also well done. You know, not a huge amount there because you also went a little bit cleaner because you don't have to deal with so many different types of RGB secondary cables or anything along those lines. And that's kind of one of the benefits of keeping a cleaner looking build. So overall, kudos, man. Clean, well executed. Best of luck with it, man. Very, very solid submission. So kudos, Brett. I'm definitely a fan of this build. Okay, so let's see what we got next here for our next build. Next is going to be Chris. Chris has got a really cool build as well here. And this is going to be moving on from ROG, I think actually to Tough Gaming is what we're going to have here. Yeah, very, very cool. So let me see here if I can find Chris's submission form. And I can kind of go through it here. 1 second. Got one more there. Okay, there we go. Okay, guys. So we can see got kind of a nice blue vibe going on here in terms of kind of the accent, everything from, of course, his gaming chair to, of course, the keyboard and mouse to, of course, the system itself. Taking a closer look at it, we can see that he's got a GT301, so that's our compact tough gaming chassis. It's a nice chassis, definitely a little bit on the smaller side, but he was able to fit actually quite a bit in there in terms of the overall amount of hardware that he's got present in there. So definitely kudos to him on that side. It's looking good there. And now let's take a closer look here at the angle. You can see that definitely you've got those distinctive aesthetic that you have on the GT301 where you have the, of course, straps. Now this is a little bit different than the larger GT501, which has actually the straps at the top of the chassis. And here you have them at the front. You could remove them, but it doesn't really affect really the front intake airflow. So it's there to kind of just add a little bit of kind of an aesthetic difference. And we can see kudos definitely where he was able to go ahead and get the cables routed pretty cleanly, pretty effectively here in the back of the chassis. So no issues on that side. And here we go, got a non-RGB vibe right here. So this is the Tough Gaming LC240 cooler. And you can see he's got a Tough Gaming 30 series graphics card in there as well. And it's packed right up there, just almost up against the radiator, which he has mounted there on the front. Now you can't mount the rad here in this unit on the top because there's not enough front clearance space. It's pretty much only designed for just fans at the top of the chassis. So this would be the normal orientation. And here we can see that we've got it lit up in blue. Overall clean, I think really nice, well done, right? So you've got, your a Tough Gaming board that's in there. You've got the 30 series card. You've got even the cable wrap there on the AO to kind of keep things nice and clean, curved underneath the DRAM so you can see the DRAM lit up. And then from there, your two fans in terms of RGB at the top to just give you a little bit of additional lighting to kind of fill out the overall cavity there. And then also a little bit of bottom lighting there at the bottom. Overall, it looks really good, and of course, you got just that little bit of that Tough Gaming accent vector logo that's there on the graphics card. But overall, a really clean, well done build. Definitely kudos, man. Definitely, I don't think anything to negate you on there. I think considering the amount of space that you have within that chassis, overall, it's clean and well executed. So let me actually see if we can go back here. Give me one sec, and go back to just so you can kind of see again there from the top, pulls out. You can see it kind of really snugs there in the back, but I know that he's actually, I believe, communicated to me that he's going to be considering moving over to the GT501. So actually he's interested in having even a larger chassis, and with a larger chassis, I think there's even kind of the consideration of maybe further down the road, he might be looking actually into custom water cooling. So pretty cool, man. Pretty solid build. Overall, kudos, man. Thanks for being Team Tough Gaming. So let's see what we got next here in terms of our next build. Actually, hold on. Let me 1 second. Let me actually just double check and see what Chris had here in his terms of his submission form. So the cool things here, just to note quickly, which I think is always a really cool thing, is that this was actually Chris's first build. So when you consider actually how clean the overall execution was, pretty nice, pretty sponsored. And actually the name of the system is Tron, so that blue theme vibe definitely kind of makes sense. 3 words to describe his system was my financial mistake. And for those of you who might be wondering about it, in terms of the core specifications you got here, Ryzen 5 3600 with a Tough Gaming B550 Plus board. So definitely kind of a really solid sweet spot build, really all around, really great baseline for whatever you're going to be doing for the system. 1 terabyte WD-SN550. That's a great M.2 based SSD. And then, of course, the Tough Gaming LC240. And then he's actually got a range of Tough Gaming hardware peripherals with the Tough Gaming K5 and M5 and P3. So that's the actual mouse pad, mouse, and keyboard. He's got those all set up there. So nice setup. Overall, his total budget on this system here was $1,500. So he was lucky because I think he had to wait out to be able to get the graphics card, which was, of course, the biggest struggle in terms of him getting everything. But overall, Yeah, as I noted, the main thing that he's looking to be able to go ahead and pivot into is going to be the GT501 versus the GT301. And overall, it took him about 3 to 4 weeks because he took his time, watched definitely some videos to be able to try to optimize getting everything laid out and centered well. But overall, man, solid build, man. Kudos. All right, so let's see next up what we got here. Next build is going to be from Christopher. All right, so Christopher's got a really interesting build here. So this is a little bit of an older chassis, not as common in terms of what we see it, but a really interesting approach, I think, in terms of a water-cooled setup in, not necessarily a small form factor chassis because it's definitely a larger chassis, but definitely some interesting orientation in terms of the overall kind of design setup and the way that everything is kind of managed here. So I thought it was definitely an interesting and kind of cool build. And so it's one of the reasons why I like being able to kind of call users out here, especially when they take their time to be able to submit these. So this is from Christopher. And let's go ahead and take a closer look. So you can see right there, already we've actually got a custom water-cooled system right in there. We've got some soft tubing, which actually I'm a big fan of soft tubing. I know a lot of people are big fans of hardline tubing, but sometimes I find it can be a little bit too rigid, too many lines, and definitely from a maintenance perspective and setup perspective, it's nowhere near as easy. It's cheaper, easier, and so much better in terms of maintenance to be able to go with soft tubing. One of my personal systems, soft tubing, so it's definitely a big preference on my side. And here you can see he's definitely taking advantage of it as some really easy bends to be able to kind of go route everything down from the top portion of the chassis to the underside of the chassis right there. You can see he's actually got a ASUS EKWB series card. So that's actually the EKWB water block where that's actually produced and by EK, but we actually put it into the factory. So this was our first series of graphics card, which essentially was a turnkey water-cooled experience. You didn't have to change out the block. It's essentially already there. So pretty cool in terms of that overall kind of setup right there. So here you can see also a little bit of a traditional. He's got actually a 5 1/4 kind of bay where you have the actual reservoir, and I believe not the pump, but just the reservoir right there. Those are kind of cool. I like the aesthetic of those, but of course they're not as common anymore because most of the chassis on the market don't have bays that you can put these in anymore. So usually what you tend to see is going to be the vertical cylindrical type of reservoirs. And here we can see we've got an ROG Strix board, a nice EK block, of course, with a little bit of transparency there for that RGB lighting and the light color play that we've got here in terms of kind of this white. Then we have the white fluid. You can see, of course, the rad right there, along with the pump. All that is settled there at the top, on top of the board. So an interesting setup right there. That loops in then to the block for the graphics card, which is in a horizontal profile. And then your soft tubing to kind of make everything else work out and play out. Overall, kind of a cool setup. It's definitely got a different kind of vibe to it. It's not definitely the standard. And that's the kind of cool thing about PCDIY, right? Is that everybody can approach things differently. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same. And here we can see he added in a little bit of kind of lighting and a little bit of different color play. So you can definitely see that changes up the overall kind of look and the feel and the dynamic. Overall, cool, man. I thought an interesting, definitely build in terms of kind of your overall execution, and definitely kudos, man, because definitely working in something in this type of kind of build is not always necessarily always the easiest. It can be a little bit tricky sometimes working in a kind of more restrictive type of chassis. And here you can see as we pull back out, comparing that to the very first shot that we saw, right, where it was, of course, in that lighter color, you can see an example of this where it's kind of set up. So let me actually go back here and you guys can, again, see what that looks like. So we go back out on this Cooler Master chassis right here, and then we pull out again. There you guys go. Overall, pretty cool build, man. So kudos, Christopher. Thanks for your submission here. I think you actually did go ahead and submit a form here in the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. So give me 1 second to see if I can bring that up here so we can actually go through your actual submission form. Pretty sure, Chris. Yeah, here we go. All right. So Cuber is the name of his system, which definitely I think is apt. It makes sense. So 3 words that describe the system: RTX 3090, custom EK water loop, and then of course the half XB, which is the Cooler Master chassis, which he went ahead and utilized right here. Total budget that he spent here was 5K. What was the thing that he was most proud of is ultimately the thermal performance that you get from going with custom water cooling. Theme that he prefers is definitely a darker colored theme with just minimal lighting, which is what I think you see when you have the kind of white vibe. He is looking to go ahead and upgrade up to a Ryzen 5 series processor, so a 5950X. Definitely had to span this out in terms of kind of getting everything, so it took him a total of 4 months, and predominantly uses the system for gaming, a bit of media, so photo and video editing, and also does a bit of mining on his system as well. And his favorite ASUS feature on his board is the Q code as well, because it just gives him a little bit easier flexibility in terms of kind of troubleshooting, and also setting the temperature. A lot of people don't necessarily realize that on the motherboards, if you have a debug LED on there, you can actually change it to a temp readout. So very cool, man. Kudos. All right, let's check out our next build here. Okay, so next build is going to be another actually water-cooled build. This one, we don't have as many images, so we only got 2 shots, so we're not going to spend too much time on it here. But here we can see a kind of non-RGB vibe set up here. Here you're using kind of that hardline tubing where you can see the definite difference. And that's kind of that really big difference, is that when you go with hardline, you have a lot more of structured line, which they can look good, but sometimes I think they can be a little bit too heavy, especially if you're using a distro plate, which you can actually see here that you're using a distro plate. But there's some interesting design choices here. So he's got an ROG Strix board, and he's got it with an EK monoblock. So that's not only just covering the CPU, but it's also covering the VRM. And then from there, of course, vertically oriented the graphics card. And then that's all tied in terms of the front distro. And then, of course, you can see he's got the LAN Lee fans that are there, which, of course, are simpler because of their essentially daisy chain design, where they connect to each other to pass through and reduce on cabling. And there you can see that within the red effect enabled, pretty cool, pretty clean. Of course, I'd say very clean in terms of the overall execution. But I think the one disadvantage is that I feel like I lose a little bit of kind of the visual distinction of the motherboard, and if that graphics card again was horizontal as opposed to vertical. But this, definitely is kind of a preference. Some builders just really like the look and feel of being able to physically see the entirety of the block and kind of their cooling and their fluid and their whole setup. But overall, it's cool, it's clean, it's well executed. Definitely a nice build. So I definitely give him credit, because it's not always the easiest. Definitely, cutting out all your hardline tubing, getting it routed out over to a distro plate. Although it is a little bit simpler when you're not necessarily incorporating kind of any bends. And so here, that is kind of one thing that if you're somebody that doesn't want to get into water cooling and you don't want to use soft tubing, although I prefer the look and the flexibility of soft tubing, going with straight lines in a distro is easy. But you're probably going to see a little bit more similarity amongst many other builders, because since it's an easier approach, it'll probably be more consistently kind of similar to other people that are posting using a distro and straight lines as well. But overall, clean, well done, and it's definitely going to be a high performing system, man. So kudos. Hey, Samuel, can you clarify your question for me a little bit? And I'll try and do my best to go ahead and see if I can give you a little bit more insight in terms of what you're asking for right there. Okay. All right. So what do we have next for our next build here? So let's go ahead and jump into our next build. Next build is going to be from GT Lim. This is a pretty sweet build. In terms of mining specific boards, yeah, no new updates on any of those boards. So pretty much the current lineup that we have available, whether it's going to be a B or H series chipset, they're all essentially already listed. So you can head over to our product page and you can look them up, but there's no new models that are planned at this time. All right. Here we go. Very, very sweet. So this is a GT Lim's build right here. This is, I think, a really, really cool, distinctive kind of build, because they went for definitely a little bit of a different aesthetic when it comes to the overall fan. So they went with, of course, these kind of like crystalline type fans, which give it a little bit of kind of sparkle and some contrast. but it kind of complements a little bit of the lines that you also have on the chassis, which has a little bit more kind of angles in place to it. And then we'll see how this kind of ties into the rest of the build when we take a closer look. So let's dive into this guy. So the first thing first is that this build actually is pretty cool because they gave us both perspectives, is that we have the opportunity to be able to see the build with a horizontal GPU and a vertical GPU. So here you can see it vertical, and the Strix card looks fantastic in there. You can definitely see, looks really clean, looks well. It's got enough space in there. Cable management is on point, and I'm loving the color play here between, of course, the black and the chassis, the silver and black that we have from the graphics card, and then from there, those bolder kind of brighter oranges and purples and pinks that we have as a kind of complementary and contrast color to the black and to the grays. So overall, that works out really well. But you can see right here that when we actually switch it over to the horizontal, I think it just, for me, it pops a little bit more. You have a little bit more depth, a little bit more kind of contrast. And I even like the cabling a little bit more, where I can see that cable kind of swoop under, and then I can see also the cable for the 24-pin power also swooping out to the right. I overall really like this. I don't feel that you would need the actual VGA brace. He might just be really critical at wanting to not have any kind of type of sag. But it also adds a little bit of a kind of cool aesthetic here to the build as well. I don't know what you guys think. What do you guys think? Do you like the vertical, or do you like the horizontal? I prefer the horizontal because I think it also gives you more room to breathe and see kind of the RAM as well, as opposed to here we can see the kind of the RAM isn't shown off as much, right? Of course, here there's two different configurations, where one we got a tower cooler, and then of course here you can see that you've got an AIO based cooling solution. So it's not exactly even, because of course if you would have had the AIO in there, you can see that you're also going to have a little bit of a different aesthetic as well, right? But overall, it's a really cool setup and a really cool build, and really well done, and the photography is super on point too. So kudos on that side. So definitely really dig this color scheme and really dig this build. Here we can see a little bit of a closer shot. You can see also nice breathing room here for the actual ROG logo on the left hand side of the board. Love the fact that he ran the actual cooler here with the cable swooping out to the right hand side as opposed to the left hand side, which would cover the logo. So good placement there. And just some nice clean shots right here where you can see, giving us a little bit of kind of that over the profile look. Overall, really well done. Very clean. And here you can see, of course, Dark Hero board is used in the system. So overall, definitely, I think credit to this builder. Really solid overall in terms of the overall look and feel. I definitely like this build. I think I would have loved to be able to see what it looked like in terms of the horizontal with the AIO installed as opposed to the tower heatsink. But that's the other kind of cool thing that I really like, is that I like the tower heatsink in there as being an option. A lot of times, everybody is always just defaulting to an AIO as opposed to a tower heatsink, and tower heatsink can definitely get you covered in terms of the thermal performance, simpler to install, can even offer, in some ways, superior reliability because there's nothing to worry about in terms of like a pump or anything along those lines. But overall, well done. So love to see what you guys have thought. What do you think? Do you prefer that vertical orientation, or do you prefer the horizontal orientation? Let me see here quickly if we have a submission form for GT Lim, and we'll jump into it. Yeah, actually, yep, got it right here. So let's see right here. Definitely not his first build. It was a sponsored build. It's called the Crystal PC Bling Empire. 3 words that he would use to describe the build. We've got a Crosshair 8 Dark Hero ROG Strix 6800 series card, Cooler Master Prismatic ARGB fans, and then G-Skill Trident Z Royals, and then the Cooler Master TD500L chassis. Total build cost that you're looking at here in terms of budget is about $3,000. And then what he definitely was most proud of was cable management, which I can agree. It's super clean, super well executed. We didn't get a back shot, so we can't see that, but I think that the theme consistency in terms of tying everything together, really well done, and the cable management just makes everything look really clean and really pop. About 1.5 hours to build. Kudos, man. Impressive. That's a lot of work right there, especially for that build. And his favorite thing was easily being able to seek everything together through ASUS Armory Crate. And if you guys aren't aware, we of course did launch the latest version of Armory Crate with version 4. So version 4 introduced some new features and functions. You guys can check out the announcement post in the PCDIY Facebook group. And we've actually got some upcoming further announcements for the upcoming version 4.1 update, which I think you guys would be pretty excited about, including a new manual check option. So if everything is working for you perfectly, you don't have any reason to update to the newer build, you will not have to worry about kind of getting a silent or automatic update. Essentially, you can check to see if there's an available update and then manually induce the update. But as always, we're going to keep working. We've got a lot of things in the pipeline in terms of Armory Crate to continue to evolve throughout 2021. And we'll keep making sure that you guys get those announcements in terms of the PCDIY Facebook group when we have those available. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into our next build here for the Builder Spotlight. Hey, man. Thanks. Thanks for joining the stream, man. Good to have you here, man. Hope you're doing well. Cool. All right, let's jump into the next build here. This is from Josh. Now, you guys, of course, we talked about, of course, the big announcement that we are really excited to be launching the ASUS Gundam series here in North America. So in the not too distant future, you're going to be able to get your hands on ASUS Gundam hardware. And here we've got a builder that put together an awesome ASUS Gundam series setup. They're not based in the US. That's how they were able to access the hardware that you're able to see here. But this gives you an example of how it can really all tie together to really offer you a unique, cool, distinctive, stylized experience. So you can definitely see right off the bat, we've got right here the RG Helios. This is the Gundam Edition. Gundam Edition power supply. Gundam Edition 30 series graphics card. Gundam Edition motherboard. And also the Gundam Edition AIO cooler, Strix LC series cooler. I really love the way that cooler looks. I think it looks so cool. Yes, Kevin, we're going to be getting there to somebody's sleeper build there in a little bit. Kudos right here, man, on the cable management. This is really well done. So I got to give credit where credit's due here. Very clean, well executed in terms of the overall cable management, especially with a lot of the stuff you got in there. Josh, definitely kudos, man. Let's go ahead and keep seeing what we got going on here. You can see a little bit of side angle, and this gives you a little bit of perspective that that's really one of the cool hallmarks. So traditionally on the normal Helios, you have kind of the geometric lines, and here on the Gundam Edition, you can see that you actually have, of course, the Gundam suit. It's got a really cool aesthetic to it, and you can, of course, see it now with a little bit of the RGB lighting in play. And here it's now with a bit of that lighting on. You can see you've got lighting down there in the bottom, of course, section for the PSU. No, of course, RG Thor, but of course you've got that little light up play that's going on here with the Gundam series power supply, so it looks quite nice. And same thing, you've got that nice, really clean RGB light bar, but customized on the Gundam model. I think really well done. And this is very, very slick, very clean. And love just all these nice little details you can see kind of when you take a little bit of closer look. I love the light up in terms of the eyes on the Strix LC series cooler, but the Gundam Edition right here. And you can, of course, see you got Corsair memory. Might have been kind of cool to maybe replace the standard fan here in the back and maybe go with an RGB fan and mirror the same type of lighting color just to kind of give it a little bit of kind of color pop there in the back. I don't think it's necessarily critical because I think that the color play is strong enough already, especially with being a white interior. There's a lot of kind of light that bounces out around that gives your ability to kind of see everything. So definitely not a requirement. And here you can see that they didn't go with custom cables. They went with the cables that come included, but they did tie those up nice and tightly and cleanly. Again, here, this is kind of similar to what we talked about, that the Helios has the option to run up vertically from the bottom of the PSU shroud as opposed to, let's say, going through the back and going over. I think I might maybe try to see if I could figure out how to make it go over just to kind of reduce a little bit of that cable buildup right there and see a little bit more cleanly that light bar. But overall, really nice. And you can even see here they got the actual Gundam series ROG Strix monitor right there, which you're not going to be able to see that when it's turned around. But overall, I thought it was cool that he threw that in there. And I just wanted to show you guys kind of the total setup. Here you can see everything from, of course, wallpaper to the monitor to the keyboard and mouse. I absolutely love the Gundam keyboard and mouse. I think they look awesome. And then from there, of course, you can see his full build. So really, really cool build, really cool setup. I think a lot of people super envious right here of this setup right here. And you can also even see of course, he has the ROG Delta Gundam Edition, and then also the RTAX82U, which is also in the Gundam Edition, and even the little actually tumbler right there. So rounding out pretty much everything. So very, very cool, man. Let me see. I think there was actually a submission form for this builder for Josh. So give me a second, Josh. I think I'm going to go ahead and see if I can confirm for you here. If we got one for you, I'd like to be able to make sure that we cover your thoughts here from your build. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I should have actually sorted it out here a little bit better so I had them all on hand. But due to having to change over for the stream, had to reboot the system, so I lost some of the placeholders that I had in place there. So give me 1 second to just kind of go through here and double check and make sure that I don't have this submission form for him. Oh, here we go. Okay, so Josh, this is from Sneaky Tech Travels, and not his first build, not a sponsored build. Of course, it's an ASUS ROG X Gundam Edition build, which is pretty self-evident, rare, unique, and clean. And just quick recap, of course, of the core hardware there. Gundam Edition 3080, 490, Gundam Edition board. He's running a 10th Gen series Core i9 in there. Of course, a Strix LC360, 850 watt PSU, the Helios chassis, running 32 gigabytes in terms of the memory. He's got also Samsung Plus NVMe 1 terabyte drive in there. And that pretty much wraps up all his kind of core components. 5,200 was the overall budget for his build. And nothing that he would change about it. He loves it. Only about 2 hours to build a system, which actually for that amount of hardware is pretty good. But then again, nothing super complicated in there. So it makes about sense, especially if it wasn't his first build. And his favorite thing was being able to easily also tie everything together through ASUS Armory Crate. So man, kudos, Josh. Definite thumbs up, man. All right, so let's take a look at our next build here. This is going to be from Justin Crawford. Hey, Stefan. So you're asking actually an interesting question here. So he's asking actually, he's got a Strix Scar laptop and he uses an external display. Does that kind of cut down on the performance? No. If you're using kind of the HDMI display output that you have there, essentially the performance should be pretty much parity. Now, if you're driving the two displays simultaneously as opposed to disabling the output display, there can be a little bit of kind of secondary load on there that you're also putting on the card. But for most intents and purposes, you should generally be seeing about the same overall relative performance. And of course, there is a benefit that if you talk about the actual general kind of response of the panel, you're probably going to have an overall better response time and overall kind of general display chain latency from the external monitor. So it's definitely not a bad configuration, especially if you've got a nice monitor to be able to pair up with the laptop in terms of using an external display. So no overall kind of worries in that regard. Okay. All right, guys. So next build right here, let's go ahead and see what we got going on from Justin. So here we can see we've got Justin's build, and I'm going to go ahead and find Justin's form right here. You can see really cool, kind of clean setup. And you can see he's got the ultra ride right there. He's got his mic set up for when he's, of course, streaming. He's got his system, and of course, the Land 011, super popular. And then also, of course, he has an ROG laptop. So kudos because he's rocking ROG DIY components, and he's rocking an ROG system as well. So thank you, man, for being part of Team ROG. Really cool, really clean, well done. You can see he went for the vertical mount in terms of the graphics card. It's cool. It's got a nice, clean aesthetic to it. Of course, he's also got some RGB cables that he's using for the PCIe power and for the 24-pin power. That's the only kind of, I think, I don't want to say negative, but that's the one factor that you have to kind of consider a little bit when you go with the vertical card, is that you tend to kind of get this overlapping RGB kind of color play, where when the card is mounted traditionally horizontally, and then you also have the power coming out from the right hand of the board, they're kind of more evenly separated, and they're two distinct kind of lighting patterns. Here you kind of have this RGB kind of layered over another RGB, and it can look a little bit off. I still think it looks cool. It definitely fits with the overall vibe, but this is where I think that there might be a little bit of a benefit if the card actually would have been horizontal. But the Strix card that you, of course, have, this is one of the it could be a 10 series or it could be a 20 series card, but it definitely has that cool kind of line aesthetic that you have when you have the vertical design. So I definitely still think it looks great here as well. And you can see, of course, you still have that nice shroud on the left-hand side that's unobstructed, so you can see the logo. And then, of course, you've got the RGB lighting also for the pump on your AIO cooler. So overall, nice and clean. Here you can see a little bit of kind of illuminated perspective, and you can see he's got, of course, fans at the bottom, fans there on the side, and then, of course, fans on the top in terms of handling his AIO. Overall, well done, man, and very clean. I got, like I said, no main issues. I think, like I said, the only one would have been like if you would have accounted for, like I said, maybe the card being there in that horizontal based profile as opposed to the vertical based profile, to give you a little bit of flexibility when it comes to the, like I said, the routing for the cabling when it comes to the PCIe power and the 24-pin motherboard power. But overall, outside of that, I don't really have anything to note on. It's clean and it's well executed, man. So best of luck with your build. A solid job there. You see, I think you did go ahead and supply us with a submission form as well. So I just want to see what we might have from you here. So give me 1 second. Okay, actually, I thought we did. So I guess we don't. All right, no worries. All right, so next up here, Kevin, you've been waiting. This is the sleeper build updated. So some of you guys might have actually checked out this build previously, and this is the update. So here's kind of the one of the previous versions, and actually I gave him some feedback that I thought it would be kind of cool if it was painted black, and I think Kevin was probably going to end up doing it anyways, but he actually ended up painting it to make it a little bit kind of more sleeper, and I felt that it would also add a little bit of more pop if we saw it with kind of a painted black interior when there's a little bit of lighting inside there. So he hacked out an actual old OEM chassis, and that chassis then actually has custom DIY components in there as he gets ready to transition to another build at a later time. So his original goal was just to kind of have something up and running that he could use for kind of just general gaming. It wasn't necessarily intended to be like a quote unquote, you know, full custom high-end system, but it was to kind of try to maximize some of the other items he had, put them together, and get together a system that's clean and well executed. And it definitely, I think, it came through really well here. So let's go ahead and take a look and see at the work in progress that it is. So Kevin, I know you totally for sure submitted a form, so I want to bring up your form here. So give me 1 second to toggle through here. But you guys can see that there, you've got the paint from, of course, the silver, and now we go over to the flat black. I think that should be a flat black, right, Kevin? And you can let me know. I don't think you used the gloss there. I'm pretty sure it's just a flat black. And from there, you can see that you have a definitely big difference. It looks a lot cleaner. Just kind of helps to darken things up there in terms of the overall look and feel. I actually like the fact that he's got the traditional tower heatsink in there. Nice, actually, consistent coating there as well as on your spray application. So kudos, man. And we can definitely see right there that overall it came out pretty well in terms of the overall look and feel there. So you can see right here, he's got the bottom graphics card, right, with a little bit of the RGB illumination there, a little bit of the red. He's got your fan, your hard drive right there. It's got some Corsair Vengeance memory on there, and then, of course, your Arctic cooler, and then exhausting out to the rear-mounted fan, and then, of course, his 1200 watts, which is a lot more than he needs, but totally, I think it's just what he had on on hand right there. But overall, it's clean, it's well done, it's executed, and it works well. And then, of course, you tie that together, and when you put that panel on there, it looks actually quite nice, like a total like sleeper system where you wouldn't expect that kind of high performance of a system in there. And really nicely clean integrated to, of course, his ROG setup where he's got, of course, ROG peripherals. He's got his nice tri-mode setup. You can see really well done, clean, and well executed, man. And I love that he's rocking our ROG wallpapers right there. So kudos, man. Props to you. Overall, it's definitely, I think, the true representation of what you would expect when you talk about a sleeper build. So name of the system is the ASUS Essentio Sleeper, black, red, and cool. Core hardware that he's rocking in there, a 4770K, which of course is still a very solid part in terms of its overall performance. He's got a GTX 1080 Strix card in there. It's running on an H97 ASUS series board. He's got 16 gigabytes of RAM in there, 4 terabyte SSD that he's running in there, along with a 1 terabyte mechanical hard drive, 1200 watt power supply, Arctic Freezer i13 CO in terms of the cooler, along with 2 92 millimeter fans. And then from there, the RG Spotlight, 3 RG monitors, PG278Qs. Those great monitors. And then from there, he's got the Horus keyboard, which is our first kind of original gaming keyboard. It was really cool, nice, very distinctive design. It's no longer available, but it was actually definitely a cool keyboard. And a mouse, he's got the RG Chakram, which is a very cool, interesting mouse. Great if you've got bigger hands like me. And then the Batless, the gaming Surface, which is the same one I'm using right here. And then he's even actually rocking an ASUS Switch with the GP 108. So overall budget in terms of everything that's been put in there, $2,000. Painted the interior black, right, and definitely a sleeper-based PC. So overall, well done. Primarily uses it for PC gaming, Halo, Master Chief Collection, CSGO, and Fall Guys. So overall, very cool, man. Kudos, man. Thanks for sharing this build. So well done. Hey, yeah, so somebody was actually asking about when is the PG32UQ coming. If you're not aware, Nelson, we do actually have a product tracker inside of the PCDIY Facebook group. So in the PCDIY Facebook group, essentially any products that have not yet been released, I have them posted there inside that product tracker, and I update it on a weekly basis, which will include information on that part and kind of the expected availability if I have that information. I can tell you for the PG32UQ and the UQX, we are expecting availability before the end of Q2. I'm still a little bit fuzzy in terms of kind of a specific target time frame, but I would probably expect to see a bit more information towards the end of this month and maybe potential availability as we look towards May. But make sure to keep tuned to that product tracker, and of course in our PCDIY weekly streams, where right now here we're only finishing up the stream with just the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. Normally in the initial first part of the stream, we talk about kind of product availability. And usually I'll give any immediate announcements if we're kind of expecting that the product is going to be rolling out, and you should seeing it, within, 7 to like 14 days or something along those lines. So overall, as of right now, look towards the end of Q2 timeframe. And if you're looking for consistent updates, make sure to join the group and check out the product tracker. Okay. All right. Hey, Dennis. Yeah, so Dennis, you're asking is that how do you submit rigs for your system if you're looking to be able to go ahead and highlight it? If you want to have take advantage of the PCDIY Builders Spotlight, all you need to do is join the PCDIY Facebook group, and under announcements, it's the pinned top announcement. There's actually a Google submission form. Just submit the form, fill out a little bit of information, upload your pictures, and that's it, man. Super simple process, very easy. And I usually pick between about 7 to 10 systems, and so there's a pretty good likelihood if you submit, you're probably going to get featured on the stream. And so moving forward, now that we're multi-streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and we're even going to be streaming out to more platforms in the future, it gives you a cool opportunity to be able to highlight your builds. And we also are going to be looking to select some of the featured builds in the Spotlight to even also be showcased on our PCDIY website in the future. So a pretty cool opportunity to be able to show off the great build that you're using when you take advantage of ASUS hardware. All right, guys. So let's jump into our next build here. We got 3 builds left here, guys, and then we will be wrapping things up. So next build is from Perry. All right, Perry, give me 1 second here. Get your images loaded up. All right, here we go. Perry's got a custom water-cooled system. He gets an immediate thumbs up from me just because he's rocking some Klipsch RPM series speakers. Absolutely love those speakers. Great tonality. I'm always a big Klipsch fan. But here he's got a custom water-cooled system. He's using soft tubing. Again, I'm a fan of it just from the convenience, the ease of getting it implemented, and also depending on kind of the way it can be laid out, it gives you some definitely a different kind of aesthetic layout. Here, this is definitely a little bit more of a distinctive, different system than we will see, I think, with a lot of kind of the current trends of water cooling. But that's kind of the cool thing, is we can kind of see what his approach was here. So let's take a little bit of a closer look as we get into the inside here with no RGB illuminated. You can see the first thing is this is a non-traditional kind of chassis setup, where you got the PSU down here at the bottom. You can see vertically mounted graphics card, ROG motherboard. He's also running a monoblock there at the top of the board, which is covering the VRM and the CPU. You can see the custom loop configuration flows down there from, of course, the monoblock to the graphics card. You can see how this is actually the Founders Edition with the EK specialized block, because it's got the rear inlets and outlet connections that goes down to the flow monitor and of course to the res. And there you can of course see the rest of the fans there at the front. And you can also see right here he's got some panels that are built in there for some stat monitoring, which is kind of a cool thing that we've been seeing a trend over the last couple of years. And overall here, now it's lit up with some RGB vibes. So definitely you can see that it's got quite of a different feel once the RGB lighting goes on there. And here, I think the nice soft white works well. Very clean, well executed, gives it a nice kind of bright, clean dynamic to it. And looks definitely different. And I think that's the cool thing, is that it's definitely not like a similar build that you're going to see every time you see kind of a custom water-cooled build. And definitely more than enough cooling definitely going on here. So see here, a little bit of a different color play going on here. It's cool. I like it. I think I prefer the white versus kind of like this little bit of this purple hue kind of color. What are your guys' thoughts? Do you have a preference between the white or the purple? I think the purple could feel, it might have some kind of softer, kind of warm vibes to it in the nighttime, so I could kind of see where that's going. And here you can see the stat panels, which he's got that broken down for, of course, all the key metrics, including, of course, his Dark Hero board, which is running everything, NVIDIA graphics card, which you can see 3080, and then, of course, his Ryzen running that 5900 series processor in there as well. So overall, very nice, very cool, well executed. Yeah, the info screens are great. For some people, they kind of ask is like, how can I do that? My big recommendation is to check out Beta Panel. Beta Panel has, I think, the easiest options that are out there, where they just run directly to an internal USB header, and you can tie them in with ATA64. You don't have to use like an SBC board or kind of having to run the cables out to like an HDMI output on your card or anything kind of complicated like that. So I do think that it is an easier kind of overall experience. So let me go ahead and bring up your builder submission form here. Yeah. So give me 1 second. Yes, I got it right here. So actually, this is Jonathan Stone. Kudos, man, on your build. Overall, very cool. Let's see. No name for his system. Likes to keep it straightforward. Functional, showcase, and direct are 3 words to describe the system. It's a 3090 with a 5950X based on a Crosshair 8 Dark Hero, and he is running some sweet memory with G.Skill 3800 megahertz CL14. So this is a man that likes his efficiency when it comes to memory. About 5K in terms of the relative budget. Soft tubing. He likes it just from the flexibility of being able to get everything kind of laid out, and also gives him a little bit of a different aesthetic. And also the inclusion of the pump, which he actually Velcroed down there at the bottom, right? Yeah, do the inclusion of a flow pump that is Velcroed to the bottom fan. That's pretty cool, man. No specific theme that he's got here in the system. He rebuilt it multiple times just to kind of fix initial issues. And so overall, you know, he thinks, you know, one area that he could have improved upon is maybe just a little bit better planning to not kind of have to redo things. That's kind of the nature of sometimes what happens with water-cooled builds. You kind of go about trying a couple of things out, and sometimes you find a better way to do it, or something you prefer in terms of kind of the look, the feel, or the overall functionality. But I think that's definitely one of the cool things about soft tubing. It's a heck of a lot easier to be able to adjust your build than if you do a hardline setup. Especially if you're not using a distro, you're going to have to kind of go through a lot more time and effort to get things resituated. 2 days overall for his build, and about 40 to 50 hours total. Predominantly a gaming-based system where he plays Overwatch, Red Dead 2, Borderlands, Cyberpunk. So sweet. And his favorite feature is he loves dynamic OC switcher, which is exclusive to the Crosshair 8 Dark Hero, which that's a really awesome overclocking feature that allows you to essentially have kind of 2 different clock profiles that can dynamically be toggled. One essentially for maximizing kind of all-core frequency, and another for kind of maximizing turbo frequency or lightly threaded frequencies. So it's a really cool function and feature that we innovated and is exclusively offered on the Crosshair 8 Dark Hero. All right, man. Well, kudos, Jonathan. Very cool build. All right, next up is going to be Ryan. Ryan's build. Oh, Ryan, very solid build. This is kind of definitely, a build that I'm a fan of. It's kind of got that realistic kind of real world, I kind of call it a daily driver type of experience, but polished, well cleaned, and executed. So definitely I give him props here. So here we go. See what we got going on. And you can see right off the bat, no RGB illuminator right here. We've got 120 millimeter AIO set up right there. And then you got your Strix series graphics card. It's got some nice kind of clean white and black cabling going on there in terms of that. Fractal chassis. Let's go ahead and see how this turns out. A little bit of an angled shot there. It's using some of those RG stickers. Overall, very clean in terms of the cable management. So kudos, man, Ryan. Well done right there. And then we've got the the RGB vibes now set up and at play right here. And I think he gave us this alternate. I'm definitely a fan here. I think as opposed to the RGB, going with the soft white. I think the soft white really kind of complements it, brightens everything up, gives it a nice clean aesthetic right there. Overall, I think a very cool setup. Nothing to really take away here. I mean, it's clean, it's well executed, it's balanced. The cable management is on point. Overall, clean build, Ryan. Definitely, I think a reason why I asked for it to be submitted. So let's go ahead and just recap here what's on your submission. So 3 words to describe your build, man. You got sleek, clean, and simple. He's running a Strix B450F, which is a very solid board. It's great. It's been updated a huge amount. So literally it supported everything from the first Ryzen 1000 series processors all the way up to the Ryzen 5000 series processors. He's running a Ryzen 2700X, solid part in there, 2060 Super. He's got 32 gigabytes of 3200 megahertz memory in there. He's running the Strix Ryu 120 millimeter. So that's the reason why you see that cool little kind of display on the pump, is that the Ryu is one of our screen-based coolers like the Ryu Gen. So we do make that in a 120 and a 240 millimeter, whereas the Ryu Gen comes in a 240 and a 360 millimeter. He's running some of those Arctics ARGB fans, the Bionics X, the new P120 ARGB fans, and that's all housed inside of a Meshify C. And he's also got in there a 4K 60 Pro capture card for streaming purposes. So that's there running the bottom PCIe slot. His goal was to do this as cheap as possible, but still get great performance, which I think gives him a good balance as far as kind of the hardware that he's got in there. And the thing that he actually most likes and that he's most proud of is getting actually all the lighting controlled via Armory Crate. I know he's definitely worked through that, and so it's great to be able to see that he was able to manage essentially being able to control all the lighting through there. Overall theme, white and black. He's thought about maybe in the future might maybe upgrade to a bigger chassis, but overall not a huge point there. And his favorite kind of function of that system and the Ryu cooler is going to be the GIF animation support. Overall, man, cool, solid build. All right, I think we got one last build, guys, and we'll be wrapping things up here. All right, this is Sean's build. So Sean definitely had, I think, some interesting feedback from the community, because a lot of people immediately thought that this build wasn't functional because of the way that the graphics card was situated. So we're going to see what your guys' initial thoughts are here when you take a look at this build. So give me a second here to load up these images, and we'll go from that. But I think kind of the rule of thumb here is, you always want to be mindful to necessarily kind of try to get all the information before you kind of make an assumption as to how the build may or may not be working. So this is actually a mini ITX based build, and you can see right here, small form factor NZXT chassis, and here he's got a dual series graphics card, a low profile Noctua cooler that's in there as well. And on face value, you might think that essentially that the graphics card is going to immediately be essentially obstructed too much or essentially be choked off in terms of airflow. But on this chassis, there's actually venting that is there on the bottom PSU shroud. And while it might not necessarily be ideal, I can tell you that in a similar chassis setup, I've run a very similar configuration. And while definitely the card can run normal, higher than normal, if you had more airflow, his actually temperatures for gaming load were considerably underneath 80 degrees. So it's definitely not any concern in terms of the card having any type of reduced performance overall, and still definitely well within the margin of running comfortably without any thermal issues. So it is an interesting definitely setup from that perspective once you actually kind of understand the actual thermals that he's running. So here you can see, of course, it with a little bit of lighting that helps to show it off a little bit more. And you can see you've got the nice little RGB strip right there on the dual card. I love that super low profile Noctua L9i series cooler that's on there. It gives it a really nice, cool, clean aesthetic where you can actually see a little bit of the actual board. And then you can also see the DIMMs there to the right-hand side, all inside this compact chassis. But overall, cool, simple build, but clean and effective, and well done in terms of kind of not having anything that's kind of jumping out there in terms of like miscues in cable management or obstructions or anything kind of weird like that. So you get credit there because overall it's a well executed build. I think there might be a submission form for this guy, so give me 1 second. Let me check and see if there is. If there is, I will go through that, and that will wrap us up, guys. So yeah. So Sean's detailing was a blacked out clean build, which I definitely think, yes, that meets the requirements there of that blacked out clean build. He's running a pretty lean kind of part configuration here. So it's got a Core i3 10300 is H470-I ITX RG Strix board, 1660 Super. So it's got some Kingston HyperX memory, 3000 megahertz, along with an M.2 drive, 256 gigabytes, 600 watt power supply, that Noctua L9i cooler, and then the chassis is the, of course, NZXT H210 ITX. And then he's got some slim fans from Roseville in there, which makes sense because to not necessarily kind of cover the board, he wanted a little bit of a cleaner aesthetic. Slim fans don't necessarily have as good airflow, but again, the temperatures that he showed, definitely no concern. So you're still getting a little bit of additional airflow, but without necessarily crowding the overall visual aesthetic. Overall price point for his build was a little bit over $1,000, $1,050. Neat, tidy, and kind of stylish. I would agree with that. And overall, his theme was that he races RC cars, so he wanted a little bit kind of a vibe that felt similar to that. I think that's why you kind of have some of these kind of carbon fiber accents that are in there and kind of that blacked out appearance. I can definitely see where he's coming from that perspective. Thinking about as far as future upgrades is maybe an upgrade to a little bit of a higher end board, something maybe like our Z590-I series. That would definitely be a big jump up in terms of kind of the features and functionality, but also give you a great baseline that if you want to be able to jump up to a K series processor, you've got a lot of really, really cool support there to be able to kind of pump up that performance on that part with things like our AIOC technology. Took him about 2 days, plus about 2 months in terms of the overall waiting for things like parts, predominantly used for just kind of light gaming, general usage, but also enjoys that he hopefully is going to be able to have his son be able to play with him on the system, which is cool. And his favorite feature is our UEFI BIOS. He finds it simple and easy to use. So overall, kudos there, man. So Sean, thanks for sharing your build, man. Overall, that wraps up our PCDIY Builder Spotlight, guys. So thanks so much for tuning in, for checking it out. As always, thank you guys for staying through and checking out this stream. If you guys have any questions, comments, feedback, whatever it might be, feel free to go ahead and tag me in the PCDIY Facebook group, or you can also tag us now here if you're checking out this stream on YouTube. And I will do my best to go ahead and follow up there in the comments. And again, if you guys are not part of our PCDIY Facebook group, make sure to go ahead and check out the link in the description and join us there for more insights and information on pretty much the entirety of the ASUS PCDIY product portfolio. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day, and stay safe and stay healthy. Enjoy your weekend, guys.